What up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place. And hey, you ever feel completely naked without your glasses on? Me too. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the cards we saw today from Crimson Vow, because they're a lot more worth looking at than my fat head. Oh yeah, but hey, first remember to like and subscribe. Not for me, but for the chicken. For this little baby right here. Alright, Waverly. You've done all you can. Let's look at some cards. But before we get to the banana pudding, we gotta eat some of this green bean casserole. Let's look at the commons and uncommons from today, some of which are really cool. That said, let's look at Skulking Killer first. This is a 3 and a black for a 4/2 Vampire Assassin. When Skulking Killer enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 till end of turn. If that opponent controls no other creatures. Had me in the first half, not gonna lie. This looks a little bit like a big fat trap to me, but I'm not too sure. I mean, you play removal unlimited, right? That's the rule. And in this thing's case, I guess maybe you can swing in during your, combat step, and then after your opponent has made some blocks, maybe they only have one guy left and you finish that off. Like, you can finish off 4 toughness creatures with this after combat on your second main, and maybe there's ways to do that, but that doesn't sound like it's going to happen as often as you want it to. I mean, if this was like a 2-mana 2/2, then I think we'd definitely be talking, but as a 4-mana 4/2 that dies on blocks to 2 drops, I'm just not sure how much I really like this, but I'm sure there's ways to engineer game situations where this is a decent card, but it's gonna sit in your hand and you're gonna feel pretty bad until your opponent has exactly 1 creature out, which I'm not sure if that's super common, but who knows? Again, this might be way better than I think it is, but I do want to move on to Mindleech Ghoul. This is a 2-mana 2/2, and it's a better card for it. It's 1 and a black for a 2/2 zombie with exploit, and when it exploits a creature, each opponent exiles a card from their hand. So another in the long tradition of burglar rats, but I think this one is actually pretty bad. I mean, exiling a card is good. That's not bad at all, and I guess it can exploit itself if on turn 2 you just want the opponent to exile a card from their hand, but they get to choose the card. And that's not super great. It's really not. I mean, I guess it's not better than a burglar rat when you think about it, because with burglar rat, yeah, they just discard the card and they get to choose it. But you get a body, you get a blocker or something. And in a lot of cases, you might not with this card. It might have to exploit itself on turn 2 or something. But I guess you could go turn 1 shambling, ghast, eye twitch, all that stuff. And then go up a card or get a treasure token on turn 2 when you play this. But I'm just not sure how good that actually is, to be honest with you. I want this card to be good, but I'm just not too sure about it. So let's try a white 2-drop instead. This is Dawnheart Geist. 1 and a white for a 1/3 Spirit Warlock. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 2 life, which actually is pretty good, but also slightly boring, let's be honest. But in limited, late in the game, because of the way the Disturb mechanic works in this set specifically, you're going to have a bunch of auras just sitting in your graveyard waiting to be cast. So maybe in the late game, this gives you a 4 to 6 point burst of life all in 1 turn, or spread over 2 turns or something. So this could actually be pretty good. Let you hold on, get in the game, make your creature stronger by putting auras on them, gain some life at the same time. So I don't know. I think the card is actually kind of strong, and I like that it's a spirit. That's kind of good. We need more spirits that are playable in the spirits deck that don't start off as humans, right? A lot of good spirits start off as humans and you have to disturb them to make them good spirits, but not this duder. Just starts as a spirit from the very beginning, and I like that. But end of the day, again, the card looks slightly boring, I think. So, I mean, it is like an Enchantress card. It's a 2-drop Enchantress, triggers when you cast an enchantment, against 2 life per, and that's actually really kind of cool. Not going to lie, but let's go back to black creatures and see if we can find something slightly more exciting. Here's Archghoul of Thraben. This is 2 and a black for a 3/2 zombie cleric. And when it or another zombie you control dies, look at the top card of your library. If it's a zombie card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So that's kind of neat. I don't love the 2 toughness or the 3 casting cost. Actually, that's a little bit slow in today's standard to really elevate the zombies deck to where it needs to be. But I don't know if that's the purpose of the card. I could see getting excited about this card, especially if you're a budget zombie player and you just wanted your deck to get a little bit better, more consistent. Congratulations. Your deck got both of those qualities now, but I'm just not sure that this is everything the zombies deck needs to really compete. But at the same time, I mean, it's kind of weird that we're in a standard where a sort of Midnight Rider or a Midnight Reaper isn't good enough for the zombies deck. But, I do like that there's a May ability on it. So if you need to draw the land on top of your library or the removal spell or whatever, then you can just be like, yes, I get to draw that and go ahead and draw that. But at the same time, if a bunch of zombies die at the same time, a wrath effect, or maybe you swung with 3 different decayed zombies and they all die at the same time. Then you get a bunch of triggers and you can blow past that swamp on top of your library and get some actual zombies. So there's some really, really cool things about this card, but I'm just not sure that it's quite enough. That said, it definitely goes into the zombies decks. 100%. You know, being able to just effectively draw cards whenever your dudes die, even when this guy dies, he replaces himself some of the time, is nice, but sometimes you'll whiff on this and it's not going to feel good. Sometimes you'll be on the draw and this isn't going to feel particularly good then, but the deck did need some wrath protection, and again, I like the way it plays with decayed stuff, so the card could have a chance. Or we've almost made it out of uncommon land, but we're into some really good stuff now, like Vampire's Vengeance. This is 2 and a red for an instant that deals 2 damage to each non-vampire creature, and you create a blood token. It's dope. That's a fine card, man. Why is it instant speed, too? Like, it makes it even better. It's fantastic, man. I like that, like, even non-vampire decks, like control decks and stuff that want to play a Cinderclasm, a Crush the Weak, you know, one of those cheap red board wipes that deals a couple of damage to every creature. They could totally play this card. I mean, like, the fact that it sweeps, like, small aggro decks, tokens and stuff like that, mono white, at instant speed. Why is it an instant? It's incredible. But the fact that it does that and just throws you a random blood token at the same time, like, yeah, that's actually quite good. Like, and I haven't even talked about the Vampires deck, in which this is probably a very nice sideboard card. Or like, if you're in best of 1, might be a 1 or 2 of. You know, like, depends on how much you care about blood tokens or how important aggro is in the format. But I imagine it's going to be kind of hard to win the mono white matchup some of the time, and this really helps you do that. So a lot alike. Excuse me, I can't even talk. I like this card that much. There's a lot I like about this card. I mean, man, it's double V for Vengeance. I'm doing my best to make a joke about it, but I honestly think the card is too serious to warrant a joke. This is a pretty sweet little sweeper here. But up next, I should probably go ahead and address it. We've been here for 10 or 15 minutes already, and I haven't talked about it yet, so let's go ahead and screw it. Let's look at Alchemist Gambit. This is 3 mana. This card exists. This is 1 and 2 red for a sorcery, with cleave 4, 2 blue, and a red. Now, you take an extra turn after this one. During that turn, damage can't be prevented. At the beginning of that end step, you lose the game. Exile Alchemist Gambit. Now, if you pay it for that 7 mana cleave cost, you don't lose the game. All right, so wow, we're doing this for some reason. I guess it's been a good, almost 7 years now on the channel, but I guess with this, I should probably just pack it in. So, you know, spread love, be kind, do all that stuff, and I will see y'all when I see you. Bye, everybody. You take it easy. Let's get out of here. Okay, I'm here. You know what? Don't worry about it. I'm here. I'm here, everybody. I like my job. I decided I like my job. But I don't care for this. Why? What are we doing? I don't know why there's 2 now. They're multiplying. It's extra turn spells. How many games against, I don't know, mono white or just any other opponent that's trying to go underneath you have you been like 1 turn away from Auron's Epiphany win the game? Right? And you didn't even need the birds. It's like, I just need 1 more turn with these 1 or 2 Goldspan Dragons. I'm on the back foot, so I have to like block with my Goldspan Dragons. I don't want to do that. If I could just cast this Auron's Epiphany for like 5 mana, then I could win the game right now. Well, now you can cast that Auron's Epiphany for 3 mana, baby. There's so many situations like the one I've just described that I've found myself in playing this deck where it's like, well, I can't pay the 6 mana for Auron's Epiphany and Foretell, so I guess I'll die next turn. But if I could just get 1 more turn, then I could win this game, but you're just like a mana off of it because you never drew the 6th land. You're not going to get the birds, but you can cast your Auron's Epiphany for 3 mana. And by the way, cast something else. Like now for 8 mana, let's say you have a Goldspan Dragon out that's making tokens, treasure tokens. Well, now it's not super hard to have 8 mana. Cast another Goldspan Dragon and immediately cast this and swing. There's a lot of lines with the 3 mana version of this card that are silly, but the 7 mana version is, I guess, worse than Auron's Epiphany. It doesn't make birds, and it can be hit by like disc artifacts more easily. So you could call it a fix Auron's Epiphany. You could call it that, but it's still an extra turn spell, man. Every time they put him into standard for the last like 4 years, it goes wrong. So I just don't know why we need two. I don't know why we need a fixed one. Don't stop trying to fix it. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just coming across as too negative, but I think a lot of people feel the way I feel about this. Just like, why? Why do we need it? Why do we need it? Are you going to ban Alrund's Epiphany? Is this a signal that you're going to ban Alrund's Epiphany now? Or are we going to have to play for like a whole month in a format where Alrund's Epiphany gets to play like 6 taking extra turn spells? Or 8 if they want them. It's just... man, 2 more years. 2 more years of extra turns, Wizards. Will you ever learn? Will you? I'm just not... Oh, we got to talk about a different card. This exists. This card exists. I'm sorry that it does. But let's turn that frown upside down. Let's talk about Runo Stromkirk, baby. Can we do that? Runo! This is 3 mana. 1, a blue and a black for a 1/4 legendary vampire cleric with flying. When it ETBs, put up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may reveal that card. If a creature card with mana value 6 or greater is revealed this way, transform Reno into Krathus, Lord of the Deep. This is a 3/5 flyer. It's a legendary Kraken horror as well. And whenever it attacks, you create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. If that creature is a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent, create 2 of those tokens instead. This is cool, man. A 3 mana 1/4 flyer that gets a thing back, replaces your draw for the next turn with an important thing from your graveyard, and has the ability to transform. And when it does transform, dude, it's actually really good. It's kind of an Asika's Chariot in that way. It's just like, doesn't even have to copy a token. It just copies just an attacker, which is great. And then like it can copy shapeshifters. I want to throw that out there too. It can copy like Maskwood next or Mask Vandals and stuff, and maybe bust up like your opponent's Asika's Chariot with the ETB trigger. Like that seems really good. Again, 3-drop flyer with a decently statted body, at least in terms of blocking. Relevant creature types, like there's a lot that lines up about this card that I really like. And again, if you ever do transform it, pretty sick value off of the dumb thing. So I don't know. I think this is actually a very, very powerful Magic card. Now, I'm afraid we're going to have to bring it down a little bit because Runo is kind of a tough act to follow, and we're going to look at another 3-drop. The bad news is that worse than Runo 3-drop is Chandra Dressed to Kill. This card really needs to be a little bit better, guys. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for a 3 loyalty legendary Chandra Planeswalker. You can +1 her to add a red to your mana pool, and then she deals a damage to up to 1 target player or Planeswalker. You can +1 her also to exile the top card of your library. If it's red, you may cast it this turn. -7 Shandi to exile the top 5 cards of your library. You may cast red spells from among them this turn. You get an emblem with, whenever you cast a red spell, this emblem deals X damage to any target, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast this spell. Now, the emblem is like 5 turns away to actually do it, and then you have to cash in your Chandra, so I don't know. I'm just not sure about that ultimate, if it's really worth talking about too much, but you are doing nothing but plussing her. As long as you can protect her in some way or another, you'll never minus this Planeswalker, so you're constantly working towards the ultimate. And the ultimate is good if it goes off, but this can only really be in mono red decks. Imagine actually hitting the ultimate, cashing in your Chandra even. You hit like 2 red cards. That would kind of suck. But even in your mono red deck, that could happen. You hit like 4 lands and a red card, and that means the ultimate isn't always gonna hit right. But in any case, both of the pluses are a little bit weak. I do like that one of these pluses adds mana. An extra damage to a thing is kind of good. It sucks it can't hit creatures, but just, a steady flow of 1 damage per turn to the opponent there are worse things. But honestly, I think the good part of that first +1, and maybe the best part of the card, is the fact that it ramps you into like a Goldspan Dragon next turn or something. But you have to be able to protect Chandra because she doesn't really protect herself in any meaningful way. She just like draws cards, makes mana and stuff. Like, this kind of feels like an uncommon War of the Spark Planeswalker to me, but maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh on it. I just really wanted the Chandra in the set to be sweet. When I first saw that she was 3 mana, I got my hopes way up there, but they seem to have designed the Chandra in a very, very safe way, and I'm not actually sure I dig that. I was kind of hoping for a slightly overpowered Chandra. I don't know why, but this probably won't see all the play in the world unless there's just something about its play patterns or some sequences that I am just completely missing here. But honestly, almost at no point in the game does this seem like a very good Planeswalker, whether you're ahead or not, to be honest. I like 3-drop Planeswalkers, and this is about as strong as you'd obviously want one to be, but this isn't even close to as strong as the last 3 mana iteration of Chandra that we saw, at least by my current evaluation. I don't think it is. So I want to like a 3-mana Chandra, but I'm afraid that this one is just a little bit underpowered, y'all. Let me know how you feel about this one. So let's move on to Hallowed Haunting here. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 white for a mythic enchantment. As long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white spirit cleric creature token with this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of spirits you control. So, like an enchantment Shark Typhoon. There's actually a couple of cards today that remind me of Shark Typhoon. I like this with flash enchantments. It's a shame we still don't have like Omen of the Sea in standard, right? But this is kind of cool. It's kind of exactly the sort of jank that I like, but 7 is a pretty high number, man. You really only have to have 6. You know, because this is an enchantment, so you have to have like 6 other enchantments out. And that's a lot. That's so many, and that's just for flying and vigilance. Really, the cool part of this card is casting enchantments and getting dudes. Which is pretty, I mean, come on, that's great, especially for Commander. Yeah, this is probably going to be like super heavily played in Commander, very specific enchantments decks and stuff. But aside from that, this is kind of a 4-mana do-nothing when you play it in Standard. The first clause on it takes way too many enchantments to get to. And the second clause on it is really attractive, and I want to mess around with it, but there's just probably not enough, like, you know, flash or instant speed playable enchantments to truly have this make anyone's cut. So let's look at Maniform Hellkite, why don't we? Another 4-mana mythic here. That also, again, it slightly reminds me of Shark Typhoon. This is 4 mana, 2 red for a 4/4 dragon with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create an XX red dragon illusion creature token with flying and haste, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast that spell. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. I've really heard a lot of mixed opinions about this card today. People say it's bad. I think it's actually kind of good, but it might be a little bit win more for the decks that really want it, right? Like, hey, it goes in Is It Dragons, doesn't it? Nah, probably not, honestly. I'm not sure that they can find a slot for this card. I'm not sure that it's better than the ways that they're using their slots right now. But if you cast an Auron's Epiphany with this on the table, then you get to bang in for like 11 damage that turn. You know, plus, what, 6 more the next turn? Because of Birds and this guy, they're going to be on the table. Plus, any other spells you can cast. Like, if you cast an Epiphany with this on the table, it should be very, very easy to win the game on the next turn. So, it comes down a turn earlier than Goldspan and blocks it. But we got plenty of creatures that do that in the format. And they don't see play just for that reason. But, I don't know. There are a lot of things I like about this. I like that you can cast spells when your opponent goes into attack. You know, that's kind of why it reminds me of Shark Typhoon, I think. You can cast, like, instants and sorceries when your opponent goes into attack. You just body them, right? Like, Fading Hope your guy, get a 1/1 to block your other dude, and it's actually a really good play. So, the ability to play stuff on your opponent's turn is good. And, oh, by the way, this is silly and probably won't happen too often, but I'm fairly certain that if you make a token, like, let's say you cast, like, a 3-drop spell, you make a 3/3 flyer, and then you swing in with Essica's Chariot, you can copy the token, and it won't be sacrificed at the end of the turn, because sacrifice it at the end of the next end step or the beginning of the next end step is part of Maniform Hellkite's ability. It's not actually part of the tokens of text at all. So you should be able to copy these tokens with Chariot and keep them around, if that matters to you. And it actually might be an insanely broken thing to do. So it could matter to you. But in any case, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this. Epiphany decks seem to like this, but again, they might not find room for it. Chariot decks might like this, but it's kind of narrow. You have to have an instant in your hand, and it might not always be great or whatever. So, you know, it's not amazing. It's certainly not amazing, but I do think it's an interesting choice for Dragons decks moving forward or Control decks moving forward. Just kind of a take on Shark Typhoon that I'm into. Let's check out Path of Peril next. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery with cleave 4 white black. Destroy all creatures with mana value 2 or less, but if you pay the cleave cost, you just destroy all creatures. And there's probably better sweepers to be playing in your black-white deck, right? I mean, I think this actually, the most interesting way to analyze this card is through the lens of a mono-black control deck that needs to be able to sweep up all the, you know, mono-white 1 and 2 drops on the table, or all the tokens. It's kind of interesting. This takes out, like, Wrenn and 7 tokens, where your normal, like, Infect 3-drop sweeper wouldn't. The sort of -2/-2 sweepers they keep printing over and over. Cry of the Carnarium and yada yada. So, Pestilent Haze. There's been a million of these at this point, and this is probably the best 3-drop black sweeper that maybe's ever been printed. I might be forgetting something here, but you know, this is a good one. It is. It sweeps up all the tokens. It sweeps up all the early stuff, and that might be exactly what your mono black control deck wants. But if your mono black control deck can create treasure tokens, and nowadays they very obviously can a lot of the time, this is just like extra copies of Blood on the Snow, you know, a 6-drop sweeper, and that's kind of not bad either. You can just pop a treasure token to make white and cast this for the cleave cost, and sometimes that's going to be really good. Sometimes it's going to be really good as a 3-drop sweeper. So I do think this actually does have a chance of seeing play, especially in best of 1. But let's check out Concealing Curtains. I love the flavor of this card. So much. Flavor-wise, this might be my favorite card in this set so far. This is just 1 black mana for a 0/4 wall with Defender. But you can pay 2 and a black to transform the curtains as a sorcery. Revealing Eye is a 3/4 eye horror with menace. When this creature transforms, target opponent reveals their hand, just not their actual hands on their arms, their hand of cards. Choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player discards that card, then draws a card. Now, this is the translation I have on this now, but a lot of people are saying this is actually a May ability. You don't have to choose a card from their hand if you just want to stick them with what's already in their hand and not let them draw cards. So there's some pretty obvious comparisons here. The first one being Thought Not Seer, but there's also, I guess, like Vendilion Click if you want to go that far with this. I don't think this card's as good as either of those cards by a long shot, but I still think this card is pretty good. This is another one that I've seen people just like crapping on today, and I don't get it. The card looks kind of fine, you know. 1 mana for a 0/4 isn't going to shock the world, but it is going to block the world for the first few turns of the game, and like that's kind of good against mono green and mono white. Like a 0/4 is better than you think. If you have no better 1-drop to play, do it. You know, if you didn't draw a Ghast or Eye Twitch or whatever. But this might be better in terms of opportunity cost in best of 3 than a card like Eye Twitch, like all day. So, you know, I really don't think this is terrible as a blocker in the early turns. But then, when you do have the 3 mana to devote to it on your turn, getting a card out of their hand is actually really good. I know they get to draw a card, but getting the best card out of their hand, like if they haven't foretold their Auron's Epiphany, although if this is on the field, they probably will. But, you know, if they don't have anything in Foretell, you can just play this for a black mana on turn 4 after you played your land, and then immediately activate it. You know, this is kind of just a 4 mana. You can do it all in one turn. Just a 4 mana 3/4, get a card out of their hand. Sure, they draw a card, but again, if it's their Auron's Epiphany, if it's that stupid new take an extra turn spell, which is much more susceptible to this card. And a bunch of other stuff, you know, Asika's Chariot, you don't even have to be on the play. You can take the Chariot out of their hand on turn 3. Like, there are good things about this card. I actually don't mind this at all, and I think it's pretty sweet. I'm interested to see if it does anything. I know that it looks like a weird card up front, but I've got my mind on it. I'm not going to do the joke. I'm not going to do it. Let's look at Tauren's Fist of the Angels. This card was actually previewed yesterday, and I just forgot to put it in the video. This is 3 mana, 1, a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary human cleric with training. Whenever it attacks with another creature with greater power, you put a +1/+1 counter on Teabag here. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you create a 1/1 green-white human soldier creature token with training, which is kind of cool. Now, honestly, I like this. I don't know how good this actually is in Standard. You likely have to untap with this in play to start doing stuff with it. But, you know, let's say on turn 4, you play this and then a 1-drop. You know, you play this into Just Spare a Sentinel or something. And you immediately get a 1/1 with training. Like, that's probably good enough value. I mean, that works on later turns too, you know? Like, if you cast this on turn 5 into 2 1-drops, or this late in the game into a 2-drop and a 1-drop, well, you know what I'm getting at. Like, suddenly you're getting a lot of value all at one time, and that's awesome. Kind of, even though it doesn't go well on curve, it kind of goes well with, like, Clarion Spirit, you know, on turns where you cast 2 spirit or 2 creature spells. Then you'll get 2 extra creatures and then a flyer. You know, you'll get 3 extra creatures on those turns. So there's some really cool things about this card. And if you get to untap with it then and start casting a buttloads of creature spells, you know, then I can see this card being really awesome. And the tokens can train for a couple of turns. And I don't know, it's good. Like, if this thing can train 1 time, then suddenly it can train your tokens twice. And, like, that's good. There's a lot of cool things about this card, but I hate to say this, but I think we're still, even after, like, Throneville Drain rotated and all that, we're still kind of in the kind of Standard where these, like, 3-drop cards that you might not be able to play until, turn 3 on the draw are quite good enough. Even though this looks like a pretty decent power level and like a lot of fun to play, I'm just not sure it's powerful enough to face life in this standard. But it does look like a cool commander, cool brawl commander as well. So I'm going to be wanting to do some fun janky stuff with this, but I'd be surprised to see it up in the top tiers. Even if Epiphany gets banned, I still don't know this is exactly what we want to be doing in terms of power level, but it's a fun looking card, and that's what I care about the most. I mean, if your opponent can't like immediately remove it, then it could run away with the game. So, so long as you have enough gas, but this incentivizes the playing of creature spells. So you play this on turn 3, then turn 4 you play 2 creature spells, and then the next turn your opponent sweeps the board and you're like, damn it. So I'm not convinced, but let's look at Voice of the Blessed. This card is good. This is 2 white mana for a 2/2 Spirit Cleric. Every time you gain 1 or more life, you put a +1/+1 counter on Voice. As long as Voice has 4 or more +1/+1 counters, it has Flying and Vigilance. As long as Voice of the Blessed has 10 or more +1/+1 counters, it has Indestructible. Now, this is a super Pridemate, a super Hallowed Priest. As much as I, complain about Hallowed Priest and Best of One on Arena. Now I don't have to anymore. Now Hallowed Priest, I guess they get to play both of them, which is a pain in the butt. Now there's a real standard legal Ajani's Pridemate. And I can be a little happier about facing that deck on the ladder. But in any case, this is a very sweet card. It's much harder to cast than a Pridemate or a Hallowed Priest, but it's going to be worth it most of the time. And I think you could probably still sneak this into 2-colored decks with like Prosperous Innkeeper and stuff and just make it enormous. Anybody that's ever played with Pridemate before knows that getting this to 4 counters is nothing. Like getting this to 4 counters is super easy. That's just very, very, very silly. After just a couple of turns, you'll have a 5/5. Flying Vigilance, at the very least. It's very silly. I like this card a lot. I know that these life gain decks, these clerics decks, whatever, they don't really usually get to the upper levels of standard, but they are, for what it's worth, an important force on the ladder for the last couple of years. And I think that this is one of the better payoffs we have in all of standard for gaining life at this point. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this show up in some way, shape, or form, especially if Epiphany does get banned. Like, it's entirely possible that there's just enough life gain out there to make this good. I mean, we have Lunarch Veteran in the format and Prosperous Innkeeper. This thing's going to get enormous, like, super, super fast. So I like this card a lot. And I'm going to be playing it like day 1. Even if it never actually becomes like super viable in standard, I'm going to be playing on the last day too. I like this thing. But let's look at the final card of the day here. And if you had your money on Helana and Alena being the 2 cards that they jam together into 1 card, then you can collect now. This is 4 mana, 2, a red and a green for a 2/3 legendary human ranger with first strike and reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put X +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control, where X is Helana and Alena's power. That creature gains haste until end of turn. So it's like a super Reckless Stormseeker, but is it? Right? Actually not sure this is anywhere near as good as Stormseeker. It does put counters on the creature. It's pretty good, and you can still use it the turn it comes into play. It does something the turn it enters. That's kind of good, but it can't target itself with its ability like Stormseeker can. And there is a world of difference in terms of tempo, especially in today's standard, between being on the play and playing a haste 3/3 guy and playing this guy on turn 4. The fact that you have to wait a whole other turn and it doesn't have haste or anything, or very good stats for its mana cost, really makes me not like this anywhere near as much as Stormseeker, and I guess you can just play them in the same deck. But the turn this comes into play, it's almost never going to give another creature haste that matters. That kind of sucks, but just the ability to throw 2 counters on something might be good enough. If you say play Stormseeker on 3, and then this on 4, Stormseeker gives this haste, this gives the Stormseeker the counters. Like, that seems super sexy, but I guess when you just compare the 2 cards in a vacuum, it's kind of clear that Stormseeker is the more powerful card in terms of, again, how we play Magic nowadays. But this is still a pretty cool commander. I keep saying that, but it could see some play in standard. I mean, it has to compete with, like, Chariot in the 4-drop slot, which isn't doing it any favors. It also competes with like Moonveil Regent, which isn't doing it any favors. But I do think that like if you get a couple of turns with the combat ability, then you're probably doing some really sick stuff that can take over a game by itself. So I don't want to discard or discount the text box on this card because I think the text box is really good, but I keep saying it feels like a running theme. There have been plenty of cards in this video that are super powerful and will be good enough in Standard, but there's also been enough cards that I've said I'm not sure this is quite enough about. And I think this is one of those. But that is it for this one. Sorry this one came out like so late at night, but I imagine by the time I get this thing out, a lot of my Europe people are going to be like just getting up in the morning and seeing this. So that's, I don't know, timing might be okay, but hell of a day today, and that's all I'll say about today. But yeah, sorry this one took me a little bit longer to get out. Thanks for your patience, and I apologize. But there are some good stuff. I feel like the overall tone of this video was kind of negative, and I hate that because I'm trying to stay positive like every day. But like, in any case, I do feel like regardless of what maybe the overarching theme of the video was, that there are some really good cards today, especially towards the middle there. There was some good stuff, you know, that eye thing, the concealed curtains. I actually think that card is kind of a sleeper. And there's some other awesome stuff that, like, new Ajani's Pridemate is dope. That 3-mana sweeper that can be a 6-mana sweeper is cool. The new Shark Typhoons are kind of okay. I like Torrens, the Selesnya guy for 3 mana. Oh yeah, Runo. Dude, there were a lot of good cards today. What am I talking about? There were a lot of awesome cards today. I think I'm just, like, upset about the new extra turn spell. That's probably the only issue, but in any case, hell, I guess today's batch was great. So let me know how you felt about it down there. I really like Runo. Don't forget about Runo. Let me know how you feel about him, but everything else as well down there in the comments section. And do all the other stuff. Like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so YouTube knows to show you when I put out new videos. That's what subscribing should be for, but they've made it a 2-step process. If you actually want the spoiler videos in your recommended feed, hit the bell for the noties. But aside from that, do all of this stuff. I'm going to be on Twitch this weekend, very likely on Sunday, to talk about all the spoilers we've had so far, any new ideas that we've had, talk it out with my chat, all that stuff, deck ideas. And it's going to be a fun time, so make sure you follow on Twitch. I would love you for that. I love you regardless. But aside from that, support me on Patreon. $1 a month is all it takes to vote on decks when Crimson Vow comes out. And you want to be a part of that. And $1 a month helps more than you really, I say it a lot, more than you understand. But that's all I got for this one. So I guess I need to start editing this video so it won't come out at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I love you all. I'm Deb from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.